Jesus, his name echoes through history. Born in a humble stable, he grew up to change the world. He wasn't a king or a warrior. He was a carpenter, a teacher, a healer. He spoke of love, forgiveness, and a God who cared deeply for every person. But Jesus was more than just a man. He was God's son, sent to earth to offer hope and salvation. And he did this, in part, through amazing acts of power, miracles. Miracles were a vital part of Jesus' ministry. They weren't just displays of power, but acts of love and compassion. They were signs pointing to a deeper truth, that God was with them. They whispered of a power beyond understanding, and they still have the power to inspire us today. Imagine a wedding celebration, music, laughter, and the joy of family and friends coming together, but then disaster. They run out of wine. It's a social embarrassment. This is where we find Jesus at a wedding in Cana. His mother, Mary, tells him about the problem. Jesus doesn't hesitate. He sees their need and responds with compassion. He tells the servants to fill 6 large stone jars with water. Water meant for ceremonial washing, not drinking. Then he instructs them to draw some out and take it to the master of the feast. The master takes a sip and is astonished. It's the finest wine he's ever tasted. Jesus, in a simple act of kindness, had turned ordinary water into extraordinary wine. Picture a crowd of 5,000 people. They've been listening to Jesus teach all day, and now they're hungry. The disciples are worried. They only have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Hardly enough for Jesus and themselves, let alone thousands of people. But Jesus takes the meager offering, looks up to heaven and gives thanks. He breaks the bread, sharing it with the disciples, who then distribute it to the crowd. Miraculously, there's enough food for everyone. Baskets overflow with leftovers. No one goes hungry that day. Jesus, through this miracle, demonstrates his power to provide abundantly, even in the face of scarcity. The disciples are in a boat, battling a fierce storm on the Sea of Galilee. Waves crash against their little vessel. Fear grips their hearts. Suddenly, in the darkness, they see a figure walking toward them on the water. It's Jesus! They cry out in terror, thinking it's a ghost, but Jesus calms their fears. Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. Peter, ever the bold one, calls out, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, Jesus says. Peter steps out of the boat and begins to walk on the water. But then he takes his eyes off Jesus, looks at the wind and the waves and starts to sink. Lord, save me, he cries out. Immediately Jesus reaches out his hand and catches him. This miracle reminds us that when we keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, we can overcome any storm. Throughout his ministry, Jesus encountered countless individuals suffering from various illnesses. He healed the blind, the lame, the deaf, and the mute. He even raised the dead. One story that stands out is the healing of a man with leprosy. Leprosy was a dreaded disease in biblical times, causing social isolation and immense suffering. The leper, seeing Jesus, falls on his face and begs, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Moved with compassion, Jesus reaches out his hand and touches the man. I am willing, he says. Be clean. Immediately, the leprosy leaves him. Jesus, in his mercy, heals not only the man's physical body, but also restores him to community and wholeness. Section 6. The significance of miracles, signs of God's love. These miracles, and many others recorded in the Gospels, weren't just random acts of magic. They were powerful signs, pointing to Jesus' true identity as the Son of God. They revealed his heart of compassion and his desire to heal and restore brokenness. Each miracle was a glimpse into the very nature of God, a God who loves, cares, and intervenes in the lives of his children. They weren't just for the people of Jesus' time. They are for us today too. They remind us that God is still in the miracle-working business. He sees our needs, hears our cries, and longs to bring healing and hope into our lives. Section 7. Learning from the miracles, faith and trust. The miracles of Jesus teach us valuable lessons about faith and trust. In the story of the feeding of the 5,000, the disciples initially doubted. They saw only lack, not God's abundance. But Jesus, through this miracle, teaches us to trust in God's provision, even when it seems impossible. The miracle of walking on water reminds us to keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, especially during life's storms. When we focus on our problems, we become fearful and begin to sink. But when we trust in Jesus, we can weather any storm. Section 8. The relevance of miracles today. You might be thinking, that's all well and good, but do miracles still happen today? The answer is a resounding yes. While we may not see water turned into wine or loaves and fish multiplying before our eyes, God is still at work in miraculous ways. We see it in answered prayers, unexpected healings, and the transformation of hearts and lives. These miracles may not always be dramatic or instantaneous, but they are no less real or significant. They remind us that God is still in the business of doing the impossible, of bringing hope into hopeless situations, and of pouring out his love and grace on those who seek him. Section 9, conclusion. Jesus, our miracle worker. Jesus, the miracle worker. He calmed storms, healed the sick, and even raised the dead. His miracles weren't just for show. They were acts of love, compassion, and power. They revealed his heart for humanity, his desire to heal and restore. They remind us that with God, all things are possible. These miracles weren't just for the people of Jesus' time. They are for us today. They invite us to believe, to trust, and to experience the power of God's love in our own lives. So open your heart to the possibility of miracles. God is still in the miracle-working business, and he longs to do amazing things in and through you.